So Niecy Nash, this second season of Claws wrapped up. Give us just a sense about some of the obstacles and changes that your character goes through in the second season, and where we kind of leave off in anticipation of the third.
Well, at the end of the second season, I was married for 5 minutes. I was married for 5 minutes. And then my spouse met with a timely death. And I find out near the end of the series that I inherited a casino. But right after I find that out, somebody takes a shot at me, and the character Virginia jumps in the way, and she's shot. Dun, 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 dun. What happens now?
Yeah.
Is where we leave off on season 2.
We'll talk a bit about some of the things that happened to you preceding those things, and how your character deals with them.
Oh, honey, how much time you got? This
Well, I guess
woman,
you give us some highlights, yeah.
well, this woman has been through many things. She thought she killed her lover, only to find out he wasn't dead. Wow. She has had a lot of challenges within her crew. The girls in and of themselves have had separate storylines where you get to know them a little better and find out what they're dealing with. She was selling, drugs and laundering money for the Dixie Mafia. Then she left the Dixie Mafia and moved into the Russian Mafia, left the Russian Mafia, moved into the Haitian Mafia. Yeah, she's been through a lot.
As an actress, is it enjoyable to get to delve into this kind of, shall I say, operatic material? Because it really is kind of, it's a grand melodrama, as we say, and it gives you a lot of different nuances and shades to play with.
Oh yeah, quite a bit. I think that I started off in the series very tough. I could handle it all. Then there was some fear once the Russian Mafia got involved, because it was like, wait a minute, you are taking me way too fast down this road. And then I transitioned into a bit of feeling a lot in season 3, what all of this is really costing me.
Right.
So yeah, it's a nice little ride to go on.
It sure is, yeah. When you get a script, what's going through your head when you're reading these things? How much?
First of all, we scan it to see if I have to have sex on camera.
Right.
Do I have to unleash the Kraken?
Yeah.
Wait a minute, what is happening? So we start there.
Yeah.
I start there.
Yeah.
And then after that, I take a look at where it's going. And then I have several phone calls about where I'd like it to go. And then comes the task of memorizing it and, bringing it on home.
One of the interesting things about this show is, it is about a group of women criminals, and we see these kinds of roles played primarily by men mostly, and then this is about some tough ladies. Can you talk a bit about the dynamic between you and the other women in the show, and just not just character-wise, but also you as performers?
Well, typically you see this sort of behavior with men leading the charge, the Tony Sopranos of the world, the Breaking Bads of the world. And it's delicious to have 5 badass women show up to the party and say, invite us. Well, you don't have to invite us, because we coming in anyway. You know what I mean? So that's a good thing. And I love the fact that our cast is diverse. I love the fact that, we're women of a certain age. And we have shown up to make our presence felt in this sort of tone. And off camera, these are women who are very committed to the task of making these characters seem very real and very grounded in a world where we have a lot of surreal moments.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's definitely a sisterhood on and off camera.
Yeah, I think that, that's the key. What you say is that, because it's big material, and it could be very ridiculous, if played the wrong way. But you really do kind of, you find that right sort of balance between the operatic and the human. You know what I mean?
It's funny because in my mind's eye, I feel like Claus should be in a comedy category.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you got strippers at a funeral, you got a forced Russian wedding, you got, just so many, you got an operatic water ballet. You have moments when we break out into song and dance, and I don't know, to me that it feels like a drama,
right.
In as much as it feels like a comedy with some dark moments.
It straddles that line. Those are very hard to do. Like just being able to find that tonal balance in a lot of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Now I wanted to ask you about the third season.
Sure.
You directed an episode coming up, right?
I directed an episode.
Was that the first thing you've ever directed on television, or
besides my children and their personal lives?
Right. So tell us a bit about, what made you want to step behind the camera for the first time?
Well, I like telling people what to do. I like being in charge.
Yeah.
And I always felt like it was a calling in the back of my mind. I've wanted to do it ever since I did The Soul Man with Cedric the Entertainer on TV Land. That's when I first got the bug. And I absolutely loved it.
Yeah. So all this time, when you were working with these other directors, were you like taking notes in the back of your head of like, okay, this is what you do right, this is what you do wrong? Were you observing like that?
Always.
Yeah.
Always. But you take the meat and you leave the bones, because take the part that works for you and the other part you got to leave it to the wayside. But I took a lot from a lot of different people because I knew I was getting ready to go down this path. And right before I started, I had some lovely conversations with Ava DuVernay, with Victoria Mahoney, women who were going down this path and saying, here's what we can offer you, here's how we can help you, here's some advice. I really like being able to change the atmosphere on set. We had come off of a very tough week before I started my episode, but I played music between setups, a little Stevie Wonder, a little Shaka Khan,
Sure.
to make the workday a little more pleasurable. I had a second line band come in, beignets, coffee, just things that will let my cast and crew know that I appreciate you. That was important to me. What I learned about myself as a director is that I like to direct my actors in private, but praise them in public.
Right.
Circle it, beautiful, yes! Out loud. But if I'm directing you, that's just over to the side, me and you.
Right.
But yeah, I loved it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Given the fact that you're also headlining this show, you're at the center of it as a performer as
Yes.
well. How did you balance those two jobs?
Playback.
Right. Yeah.
Playback monitor was my friend.
I know. Just imagine how they did it back in the day before they had playback.
Yeah, that was my friend.
Yeah.
And I'm not precious about my art to the degree that I can't watch myself.
Right.
I'm like, I could have did that better. Let me go run that back.
Yeah. I had heard a story. I was talking to when Fences came out. Michael T was talking about working with Denzel, who's also the star of the movie, and he said, he figured out everything he needed to do on camera before he stepped behind the camera, so that he could focus on the other actors and not watch himself and say, "Ooh, I wish I got to do that better." It's like having to let go of that sort of part of yourself that is, critical of your own work in order to focus on the task of directing.
Right. Well, I watched everybody,
Yeah.
myself included, because sometimes you can have a plan and you get something else from an actor and you have to adjust in the moment to meet them where they are. So I had to watch all of it,
Right. Can you give us a hint of what to expect in season 3, which I know is coming up soon?
Yes. It was the late great B.I.G. who said, "More money, more problems."
There you go.
So because I have inherited this casino, there is so many more problems that come into my life because of it. And the relationships between these women are really going to be tested this season, as well as Desna's love life, which always seems to have some sort of a challenge in it. And somebody this season is pregnant.
Okay.
Not gonna tell you who. Why you look down at my stomach? Hey, my eyes are up here. I'm not telling you if it's me. Yes, but it's gonna be for those who are fans of the show, it's gonna be a very exciting season.
Okay. Speaking of Ava DuVernay, I wanted to ask you about the project you just did with her.
When They See Us.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, we haven't gotten access to see that yet, but I did want to ask you a couple of things about it. First of all, just give us some background on the actual case that this is based on.
When They See Us is based on the story of the Central Park Five, which is 5 young men who were convicted of raping a jogger in Central Park back in, I think, 89?
Around that time.
Around that time, in the 80s. And they were convicted, and all of them were innocent. And so this, while it's been reported in different media outlets and maybe a documentary, this is really a full circle moment of them being able to contribute to the telling of their own story.
It's for people who weren't either weren't around at the time or were maybe too young to remember. I mean, this was this was like a lightning rod, and it really you had people on both sides of the aisle. People like our current president calling for them to be executed, and then people on the other side who, like you say, they were innocent. Totally. And so it really was. Can you give us a sense of just like the mood at the time that this was happening?
Well, there was a lot going on at the time, and I was just coming out of high school when this happened. So I leaned into the case more as an adult, and this is prior to ever being cast on it. I mean, cast to play one of the mothers. But when I saw it, I was like, this is such an injustice. What is happening? And so I was leaned into the case as an adult, and every time, if an anniversary or history of the event would come up, I would always watch it. Even if I saw this reporting before, I watch it again anyway. So the fact that I actually could participate in it was a gift. I mean, you had times on set where you had the real men whose stories we're portraying there. Sometimes their family members there. So you wanted to make sure you handled this material with such care, because it's so delicate.
You mentioned you played one of the mothers. Can you tell us a little bit about your character? And did you meet with the real life people before you started portraying this character?
I played Dolores Wise, whose son was Corey Wise. Corey was the oldest of the 5 at 16. And I had the opportunity to speak with Mrs. Wise over the phone prior to filming. And I had the opportunity to talk to Corey after he saw all 4 of the episodes. And he said to me, "That's my mom."
Yeah.
He was like, "That is my mother." He was like, "Thank you." And he gave me the biggest hug, which meant the world to me, because that's what you want to say. You got it right.
Yeah.
So having access to the real life people really helped the actors with this work. And I said, before that, I thank Ava so much because I've never been on a job that provided crisis counseling for you, anytime you were working and got off work and was like, wait a minute. You know what I mean? She was definitely protective of our mental health, which was a gift also.
This may sound like an obvious question, but I think it bears asking, why is this story important to tell right now or at any time?
I think this story is so important because you would not believe how many people experience this. The one thing that I will tell you is that this. It's like you look at these children, and after, and I'll tell you, being a mother, looking at these boys, that could have been any one of my children. You know what I mean? And to be in that situation where you're judged and demonized and vilified, not even based on the facts, just based on how you look.
Yeah.
It happens every day. It happens every single day, and everybody doesn't get to give vent over to tell their side and have their stories be told and heard. Now, being an actress is what I do. So I showed up to do my job, but then my who is to be of service in the world. How do I do that? After I finished this project, I was like, I have to figure this out. And so as soon as it ended, I became an ambassador for the Innocence Project, because I wanted to lend my time and my talent and my gifts over to other people who have experienced the same sort of injustice. I mean, they went to, they were incarcerated as children, and their lives will never be the same because of it. And Corey Wise, being 16, left the courtroom and went straight to Rikers Island.
Yeah. It's the worst prison in the country, right? I mean, that's, it's terrible.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's as a child.
Yeah.
We have to be mindful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's really easy to, to forget that. I mean, these were children, and
They were children.
They were portrayed as, wildlings, I think was the term that they used.
Well, and a lot of times we've been socialized to look at somebody and say, what did they do? Before we say, did they do it?
Yes.
Because of the way you look, you're guilty of something.
Exactly.
What did they do?
Mm-hmm.
And we're skipping did they even do this? You know what I mean? So I hope that that's some of the takeaway that people get, and how, you can destroy a person's life with a lie.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Niecy Nash, thank you so much for your time, and congratulations on all your work this year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.